Part 1. The Hidden Path to the Lake Crescent Moon 32nd Night Hook. At exactly 3:03 a.m., someone knocked on my cabin door. 3 slow knocks. Not loud. Not urgent. Just deliberate. The lake behind the cabin was completely still. But I could hear something moving in the water. Not splashing. Not swimming. Breathing. And the strangest part. I live alone. And there are no other houses for miles. Soft atmospheric opening. I moved to the cabin in late October. Deep woods. Northern state. Endless trees. One narrow dirt road leading in. I wanted quiet. After everything that happened in the city, quiet felt like survival. The cabin sat near a lake. Not a large one. Just wide enough that the other side blurred into dark tree lines at night. The first night I arrived, rain tapped softly against the windows. Low, rhythmic. Wind slid through the trees like distant whispering. The air smelled like wet wood and cold earth. It should have felt peaceful. Didn't. Introduction of normal setting. The place was old but sturdy. Wood floors that creaked softly. A stone fireplace. 2 bedrooms. An attic with a low ceiling and exposed beams. And a narrow trail behind the house that led down to the lake. The realtor mentioned it casually. There used to be more cabins here years ago, she said. But they were torn down after the drowning incidents. She didn't elaborate. I didn't ask. I should have. First strange detail. The second night I noticed something odd. Footprints. In the mud near the back porch. Barefoot. Leading toward the lake. Not coming from it. Going toward it. It had rained heavily the night before. The ground was soaked. If someone had walked from the lake to the house, there would have been return prints. There weren't. I told myself it was old marks from before the rain. But deep down I knew they weren't. Gradual escalation. That night the power flickered. Once. Then darkness. The lake disappeared into black. Wind moved across the surface, creating a soft sloshing sound against the shore. I lit candles. The cabin felt smaller without electricity. The silence felt heavier. That's when I heard it. The step. Stairs. Low. Measured. The attic. Froze. Old wood contracts in the cold, I told myself. Old houses make sounds. But this wasn't random. This was pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like someone waiting. Psychological tension. I didn't check the attic that night. Couldn't. Instead, I sat by the fireplace and listened to the rain mix with faint creaks above me. At 3:03 a.m., the knocking came. 3 slow taps. From the front door. My heart didn't race. Sank. Because the knocking wasn't forceful. It was patient. Like whoever stood outside knew I would eventually open it. I didn't. After a minute it stopped. But the lake behind the cabin began to ripple. Even though there was no wind. The hidden path. The next morning I found something new. A narrow path branching from the main trail to the lake. It hadn't been there before. The grass was flattened. Fresh. Like something heavy had been dragged through repeatedly. The path led to a small clearing near the water's edge. And there, carved into a tree trunk, were 3 words. Stay out of water. The letters were deep. Recent. Felt watched. And then I heard a voice behind me. You shouldn't go near it. Turned. An older man stood between the trees. Bill. Unblinking. I'm your neighbor, he said. Well, closest one. I hadn't seen any houses nearby. They never found all the bodies, he added quietly. Then he walked away. End of part 1. Cliffhanger. That night, the knocking returned. 3:03 a.m. 3 taps. But this time, it came from inside the house. Above me. In the attic. And something began dripping through the ceiling. Not water. Too thick. Too slow. When I looked up, the attic hatch was slightly open. And something wet slid across the wood above it. Breathing. Waiting. and whispering my name. Part 2, The Attic That Breathes. The dripping didn't stop. It fell in slow, patient drops from the attic hatch onto the wooden floor beside my chair. Not splashing, just landing. Deliberate. I didn't move for a long time. The fireplace cracked gently beside me. Wind pressed against the cabin walls. Somewhere beyond the trees, the lake shifted with a low, hollow sound. At 3:03 a.m., the entire world felt suspended, waiting to see what I would do next. Soft, atmospheric opening. I stood slowly. The candlelight trembled as I walked toward the attic hatch. Each floorboard creaked beneath my weight. The cabin had its own rhythm at night. Small sounds layered over distant wind, the faint hiss of cooling wood, the whisper of rain returning against the windows. The dripping stopped when I stood directly under the hatch. Silence followed. Not empty silence. Listening silence. I reached up and touched the wooden handle. It was damp, cold, as if it had been submerged in water. Pulled. The hatch opened with a soft wooden sigh. Darkness waited above me. Introduction of the attic. The attic wasn't large. Low ceiling. Exposed beams. Old insulation tucked between them. One small circular window facing the lake. Moonlight slipped through it, pale and thin. I climbed the narrow ladder slowly. The air up there smelled different. Not dust. Not mold. Smelled like wet soil. Like the bottom of a river. I stepped onto the attic floor. It felt soft. Too soft. As if something beneath it shifted slightly under my weight. First strange detail. In the far corner of the attic sat an old wooden trunk. It hadn't been there when I inspected the place before moving in. I was certain of that. Its surface was swollen from moisture. Dark stains ran down its sides. The lid wasn't fully closed. Something thin and black extended from inside it, like a strip of fabric or hair. I didn't approach it immediately. Instead, I looked at the small round window. And that's when I noticed the lake. The water was moving in slow circular patterns. No wind. No rain. Just rotation. Like something beneath the surface was turning. Slowly. Endlessly. Gradual escalation. Behind me the attic hatch closed. Gently. I didn't hear it slam. I heard it settle. When I turned around, the ladder was gone. Not fallen. The opening to the house below had sealed shut. The wood blended seamlessly with the rest of the ceiling. My breathing stayed calm. Strangely calm. That frightened me more than panic would have. I walked toward the trunk. Each step pressed down into the attic floor slightly, as if soaked wood floated over something unstable. The thin black strand hanging from the trunk moved slightly. Not from wind. There was no air moving up there. Twitched. As if reacting to my presence. The trunk. I crouched and placed my hand on the lid. Cold. Almost icy. The moment I lifted it, a smell escaped. Lake water. Stagnant. Inside were photographs. Dozens. Water damaged. Faces blurred. Edges torn. All taken near this lake. Families. Couples. Children. Every photo had something in common. In the background of each one, near the water, there was a faint dark shape beneath the surface. Butching. And on the inside of the lid, carved deeply into the wood. 303. Over and over again. Psychological tension. Something shifted behind me. Soft dragging sound. Turned slowly. Footprints were appearing on the attic floor. Wet ones. Forming one by one. Leading from the wall behind me toward the trunk. Barefoot. Identical to the ones I had seen outside. They stopped inches from where I knelt. I felt breath near my ear. Cold. But when I looked, nothing was there. Only the circular window. And the lake. Still turning. The neighbor returns. A voice drifted up through the floorboards. Muffled. Distant. You opened it. The neighbor. His voice sounded different now. Less human. You weren't supposed to open it. The attic floor dipped slightly beneath me. Like something beneath the cabin had shifted its weight. They go into the water, he continued. Every few years. One at a time. The lake chooses. My stomach tightened. Who chooses? I whispered. But he didn't answer. Instead, I heard something outside. Slow steps across the porch. Then around the back of the cabin. Toward the lake. Escalation toward water. The circular attic window fogged suddenly. From the outside. As if something warm pressed against the glass. A shape formed in the condensation. Face. Distorted by curvature. Is too wide. Mouth slightly open. Not knocking. Not screaming. Just looking in. Me. Then the face slid downward, disappearing below the window's edge. Toward the lake. The attic floor shifted again. And I realized something terrible. The cabin wasn't built beside the lake. It was built slightly over it. The back half of the structure extended above shallow water. I could hear it now. Soft lapping beneath the wood. Something brushing the foundation. Testing it. Creepy message. The trunk lid slammed shut by itself. The photographs inside began leaking water through the cracks. It pooled around my knees. And written across the damp attic floorboards, letters formed slowly in spreading moisture. You walked the path. The hidden path. The one that hadn't existed before. The one leading directly to the lake's edge. The neighbor had said they never found all the bodies. I suddenly understood why. The lake didn't give them back. Kept them close. Inside. Beneath. Waiting. Someone disappears. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The sudden sensation made my heart finally jump. Text message. Unknown number. No area code. Just 3 digits. 303. The message read. Did you see me in the water? I dropped the phone. It didn't hit the floor. It landed in water. Because the attic was no longer dry. Water seeped up between the boards. Cold around my ankles. Rising slowly. From below. The cabin lights flickered back on downstairs. Even though the power had been out. I could hear the television turning on by itself. Static filling the house. And over the static, a faint voice repeating. He's next. Final escalation. The attic hatch suddenly reappeared. Swinging open violently. The ladder dropping down into darkness. But the water kept rising. The footprints around me multiplied. Small wet steps circling. Faster now. Climb down quickly. The moment my feet touched the living room floor, the attic hatch slammed shut again. Silence returned. No water. No dampness. The floor was dry. The fire still burned softly. As if nothing had happened. I looked toward the back window. Toward the lake. And I saw something standing at the edge of the water. Not fully out. Not fully in. A shadowed figure. Head tilted slightly. Watching the cabin. Watching me. Then it slowly stepped backward. Into the lake. Without a ripple. Part 3. The room beneath the floor. I didn't want to bring anyone here. But the message stayed on my phone all afternoon. Bring someone with you. It didn't feel like a suggestion. Felt like instruction. By sunset, the sky turned the color of bruised metal. The lake reflected nothing. No light. No clouds. Just a dull, unmoving surface that seemed thicker than water should be. At 6:12 p.m. my friend Daniel texted me. Still alive in the woods. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied. Come stay the night. Soft atmospheric opening. Daniel arrived just after dark. His headlights cut through the trees in long pale beams before the engine shut off. Silence swallowed the forest again almost immediately. When he stepped out of his car, he laughed. Man, this place is isolated. His voice felt too loud. The air felt colder than it had all week. Wind moved through the trees in slow waves, like something exhaling through branches. Rain threatened but didn't fall. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. Just the basics. The knocking. The attic. The footprints. He listened quietly. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. You didn't mention the water under the house. I hadn't. Because I didn't know how he knew. Introduction of normal setting distorted. We sat by the fireplace. The cabin looked normal again. Warm light. Dry floors. Quiet air. Daniel walked around casually, inspecting the walls, the windows, the ceiling. He stopped near the back corner of the living room, right above where the cabin extended over the lake. "You hear that?" he asked. I listened. First nothing. Faint hollow sound. Like knocking. But not from a door. From underneath. 3 slow taps. From below the floor. 3:03 p.m. had passed hours ago. But something was still keeping time. First strange detail. Daniel crouched down and pressed his ear against the wooden floorboards. His expression changed slowly. "It's not knocking," he whispered. "It's breathing." A low inhale. Then a long exhale. Directly beneath us. We both stood at the same time. The floorboard near the wall shifted slightly upward. Barely noticeable. Unless you were looking directly at it. I stepped closer. The wood felt damp under my bare feet. Daniel reached down and pulled at the board. Lifted easily. Too easily. As if it had been opened many times before. Beneath it was darkness. And a ladder. The hidden room. The air rising from the hole smelled like lake water. Cold. Ancient. Daniel looked at me. "You didn't know about this." I shook my head. He turned on his phone flashlight and aimed it downward. A narrow crawl space. But not dirt. Not foundation beams. Water. Still water. Just inches below the floorboards. The cabin wasn't slightly over the lake. It was built directly above part of it, trapping a section underneath. And in that trapped section, something moved. Slowly. Like a large shape turning beneath the surface. Daniel leaned further down. The flashlight flickered. Static crackled from somewhere inside the house. The television turned on again by itself. White noise filled the air. And over the static, faint whispering. Layered. Repeating something too quiet to understand. Gradual escalation. Daniel lowered himself halfway into the opening. I grabbed his arm instinctively. "Don't." He paused. Then slowly looked up at me. His face had changed. Not dramatically. Slowly. His eyes looked tired. Heavy. Like he hadn't slept in days. "I think it wants to show us," he said calmly. The water below rippled in perfect circles. Just like the lake outside. No wind. No disturbance. Only rotation. The same slow turning motion. Daniel reached his hand toward the surface. And something reached back. A pale hand broke through the water silently. Gripped his wrist. And pulled. Psychological tension. I screamed his name. But the sound didn't echo. It was swallowed. Daniel didn't fight. That's what disturbed me most. He didn't thrash. Didn't shout. He just looked at me one last time. Almost apologetic. And then he was gone. The water stilled immediately. No splash. No struggle. Just smooth black surface. I stared down into the hole. Waiting. For bubbles. For movement. For anything. Nothing came. The lake reacts. Outside, wind suddenly surged through the trees. Rain began falling in thin, cold lines against the windows. The lake shifted violently for the first time. Large ripples moved toward the shore. The cabin trembled slightly. I ran outside barefoot. Cold mud pressed between my toes. Rain soaked my clothes instantly. The lake looked wrong. Its surface bulged slightly near the center. As if something large pressed upward from below. Then I saw it. A figure standing waist-deep in the water. Facing me. Daniel. But not moving. Not blinking. Just standing there. The rain fell around him. But none of it touched his body. It avoided him. Like the sky refused to acknowledge his presence. Neighbor's warning returns. A voice came from the tree line. "You shouldn't have brought him." The neighbor stood there again. Unchanged. Dry. Watching the lake. "It chooses someone new when you resist." My chest felt hollow. "You knew this would happen." He didn't answer directly. Instead he said, "There used to be more cabins here. Families. Visitors. Every few years someone walked into the water at night. They never screamed." He looked at me then. "You're delaying it." That makes it angry. The lake surface broke. Daniel sank slowly beneath it. Without struggle. Without a ripple. Creepy signs appear. When I went back inside, the hidden opening in the floor was gone. Sealed. Like it had never existed. But water footprints marked the hallway, leading toward the front door. And on the door itself, written in dripping letters. More. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He is under the cabin now. Another message followed immediately. You will join him tomorrow. Time stamp. 3:03 a.m. Even though it was only 9:17 p.m. Late night radio anomaly. The power flickered again. This time it stayed on. But the radio on the kitchen counter turned itself on. Static at first. Then a calm, deep voice. Almost soothing. Good evening, listeners. Tonight's lake conditions are perfect. My blood ran cold. Because the voice sounded exactly like mine. There will be one final entry before dawn. The broadcast ended. The clock on the stove blinked. 3:03. Frozen. Final escalation. I stepped toward the back window slowly. Rain distorted the view. But through the streaks of water, I saw something near the shoreline. Footprints forming again. Fresh. Leading from the lake toward the cabin. Not small this time. Adult-sized. One set. Coming closer. The porch creaked. Slow footsteps. But measured. Stopping just outside the back door. 3 soft knocks echoed through the wood. Not at 3:03 a.m. But right now. And then. A whisper from the other side of the door. Let me in. It was Daniel's voice. But lower. Deeper. Filled with water. Part 4. The house that shouldn't be there. The door never fully opened. The handle turned. Slowly. Gently. Then stopped. The water that had begun seeping under the crack at the bottom of the door retreated just as quietly as it had arrived. The porch fell silent. No more footsteps. No more whispering. Outside, the rain softened to a faint mist. Inside, the cabin felt hollow, like something had stepped back, but not left. Soft atmospheric opening. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room chair facing the back door until dawn began bleeding gray into the trees. The lake looked calm again, flat, unmoving, but I could still see them, if I stared long enough. Faint shapes beneath the surface, standing upright, as if resting, waiting for night. At 7:12 a.m., the radio turned on again. Static, then silence. Then my own voice whispered, "Find the other house." The signal cut. The clock on the wall read 3:03. Even though it was morning. Introduction of the abandoned house. I remembered what the neighbor had said in passing. There used to be more cabins here. Used to. Plural. If one had been built over the water. What about the others? By late morning, the fog hadn't lifted. It clung low to the ground, weaving between the trees like something alive. I followed the main trail past the lake. Deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, quieter. No birds, no insects. Even the wind felt muted. Then I saw it. Through the trees. An old house. Not a cabin. Full structure. 2 stories. Windows shattered. Roof sagging inward. It shouldn't have been there. I had walked the property line when I first moved in. There was nothing beyond the tree line. But now it stood there, waiting. First strange detail. The front door hung slightly open. Not broken, just ajar. The wood was damp, darkened with age. I stepped onto the porch. The boards creaked under my weight in long, tired sighs. The smell hit me immediately. Not rot, not mold. Water. Cold lake water. I pushed the door open further. Inside, the house looked almost preserved. Furniture covered in thin layers of dust. Wallpaper peeling gently. A staircase leading up. And water stains along the lower walls. As if at some point, the entire bottom floor had been flooded. Carved into the wall near the entrance were numbers. Hundreds of them. 3:03. Over and over. Gradual escalation. I stepped further inside. The door closed behind me on its own. Not slammed. Just softly shutting. The temperature dropped instantly. The silence inside felt thicker than outside. Oppressive. From somewhere deeper in the house, I heard faint dripping. Steady. Low. Like a clock. I followed the sound into what used to be a living room. The floorboards there were warped, curved upward slightly in the center, as if something had pushed from below. In the middle of the room there was a trapdoor, half open. Water pooled around its edges. I didn't want to look, but I did. The hidden water below. Beneath the trapdoor was not a basement. It was lake, directly connected. Dark water stretching into unseen distance under the foundation. The same circular motion rotated slowly, like a breathing lung. And beneath the surface, faces, dozens, open, mouths slightly parted, not decayed, not skeletal, preserved, watching upward, watching me. One of them was Daniel. His eyes moved slightly, following me, but his body didn't rise. It remained suspended below, as if anchored. Psychological tension. You see them too. The voice came from the staircase. Turn slowly. The neighbor stood there, but closer now. His skin looked stretched thin. His eyes too clear. Reflective. A glass. This was the first house, he said calmly. Before the cabins. His voice echoed faintly, as if spoken through water. They built over the lake to contain it. Contain what? Asked. He smiled faintly. It isn't the lake. The floor trembled slightly beneath us. It's under it. The truth about 303. He walked slowly down the stairs, never blinking. 303 isn't a time, he continued. It's a depth. Cold spread through my body. 3 meters. 3 feet. 3 inches. He tilted his head. The point where it can reach. The dripping sound stopped. Total silence filled the house. Then from beneath the trapdoor, a hand emerged. Not breaking the surface violently. Just rising. Gently. Pale fingers curling over the edge. The neighbor didn't react. They tried draining it once, he said quietly. Years ago. That's when the drownings began. His expression softened. You're not the first to delay it. My throat tightened. What happens when it gets angry? He finally blinked. The town loses power. Power outage spreads. As if on cue, distant sounds echoed through the forest. Faint hum dying. Then complete silence. Even the fog seemed to stop moving. The neighbor turned toward the window. You feel that? I did. An emptiness. Like electricity itself had been swallowed. The grid reaches this far, he said. But not when it feeds. The hand at the trapdoor pulled itself higher. A shoulder emerged. Then a face. But it wasn't Daniel this time. It was me. Open. Expression blank. Water streaming from hair that moved as if still submerged. Escalation. The house groaned deeply. Wood bending. Nails straining. The water below the trapdoor began rising slowly. Not spilling over. Just climbing. The faces beneath the surface shifted upward with it. The neighbor stepped back toward the stairs. You still have a choice, he said calmly. What choice? He paused. To walk in yourself. The figure that looked like me began pulling itself fully onto the floor. Movement slow. Jerky. As if learning gravity. Its mouth opened slightly. And water poured out. Endlessly. But silently. Someone else disappears. Through the window behind the neighbor, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A truck driving along the distant dirt road. Headlights cutting through fog. Probably a utility worker. Checking the power lines. The truck slowed. Stopped near the lake. The driver stepped out. Looked toward the water. And then walked forward. Like Daniel. No hesitation. No panic. Just walking calmly into the lake. Until the surface closed over him. Without a ripple. The neighbor watched. They feed beyond you now. Final escalation. The version of me standing on the floor tilted its head. It began walking toward me. Each step left a puddle. But the puddles didn't spread. They stayed contained. Perfect circles. 303. The water from below surged higher, touching the trapdoor frame. The walls began sweating moisture. Whispers filled the air. Layered. Repetitive. Come back. Come home. Come under. The neighbor's voice faded. You can't leave the property once it marks you. I realized something slowly. I hadn't seen the road out since last night. End of part 4, cliffhanger. The house lights flickered on suddenly. Even though there was no power. The reflection in the window showed the lake. But not the house behind me. Only water. As if the structure no longer existed. The version of me stood inches away now. Its breath cold against my face. And it whispered one sentence. You were already under. Then the floor gave way. And we both fell. Into black water. That felt nothing like drowning. Part 5, the room below the water. Falling into the lake felt nothing like drowning. There was no shock. No desperate gasp. No burning lungs. It felt like stepping through a thin curtain. Cold, yes. But controlled. Muted. The world above, the house, the forest, the fog, folded inward like paper being closed. And then there was silence. Soft atmospheric opening. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't underwater. I was standing in a hallway. Carpet beneath my feet. Dry. Dim lighting overhead. The air smelled faintly of cleaning solution and something older. Something stale. Hotel hallway. Long. Narrow. Numbered doors on both sides. Soft yellow light flickering gently from wall fixtures. No windows. No visible exit. The only sound was distant static. Low. Constant. Like a radio left on in another room. At the end of the hallway, a small metal plaque hung crooked on the wall. Room 303. Introduction of the hotel that shouldn't exist. I walked slowly. The carpet absorbed my steps. Oh well. As if it didn't want to echo. Each door I passed had a number. Then 302. And finally, the door stood slightly open. Just an inch. From inside I heard the sound of water dripping. Low. Measured. Familiar. I reached for the handle. Felt damp. Cold. Like the attic hatch. Like the floorboards. Like the lake. Pushed it open. First strange detail. Inside the room was my cabin. Perfectly replicated. Fireplace. Wooden floors. Back window facing the lake. But the lake outside the window was not calm. It was pressed directly against the glass. As if the entire cabin sat beneath the surface now. Water moved slowly across the outside of the window. And shapes drifted past. Bright. Watching in. The television in the room was on. Static. Then the calm voice again. My voice. Welcome back. I stepped inside. The door behind me shut softly. And the hallway disappeared. Gradual escalation. The cabin looked identical. Except for one detail. The floor near the back corner, where the hidden crawlspace had been, was already open. The ladder extended downward. But instead of water below, there was another hallway. The same hotel hallway. Stretching endlessly beneath the cabin. The walls began to sweat. Moisture forming in thin lines that slid downward like tears. The clock on the wall ticked softly. But the hands did not move. Frozen at 303. I walked toward the window. Pressed my hand against the glass. The water outside shifted. And a face pressed back from the other side. Daniel. Open. Expression neutral. Not pleading. Not angry. Just observing. Psychological tension. You see it now. The neighbor's voice came from behind me. Turned slowly. He stood near the fireplace. But he looked different. His clothes were dry. But his skin shimmered faintly. Reflecting light like a surface disturbed by water. You're not dead, he said calmly. You never were. I swallowed. Then what is this? He tilted his head. This is where it keeps you while it decides. Decides what? If you return above. Or stay below. The floor shifted beneath my feet slightly. A subtle floating sensation. like the entire structure rested on deep water. 'Cause it did. The truth about the neighbor. You're not my neighbor, I said quietly. He smiled faintly. I was. Once. Images flickered across the television screen suddenly. An old photo. Family near the lake. A man standing slightly apart from them. Thinner. Paler. But unmistakably him. They built this place after the first disappearances, he continued. To monitor it. Study it. Study what? He looked toward the window where shapes drifted past. The current beneath the lake. On the screen, another image appeared. Map. The lake circled in red. Beneath it, a note. Anomaly at 3.03 meters. My chest tightened. You fell in too. He nodded. Years ago. I was pulled beneath the foundation of the first house. And now, I guide the marked ones. Disappearing footprints in snow. The television shifted again, showing a winter scene. The cabin covered in snow. Footprints leading from the forest toward the lake. Stopping abruptly at the shoreline. No return prints. The camera zoomed slowly, and I recognized the coat in the footage. I had never been here in winter. Yet there I was, walking toward the lake. Alone. The screen glitched, then showed another scene. Small town nearby. Street lights flickering out one by one. At exactly 3:03 a.m. Darkness spreading like ink. Escalation. The water outside the window began rising, pressing harder against the glass. Cracks formed slowly, spidering outward from the center. The neighbor's reflection in the glass looked distorted. Longer. Thinner. More fluid. It feeds on repetition, he said calmly. On cycles. The hallway beneath the cabin began filling with water. Could hear it. Rising. Gently. Not flooding violently. Just reclaiming space. And you? Asked. Why are you still here? His smile faded slightly. I didn't choose. Choice. The ladder to the hallway below shifted, becoming a staircase, descending into dim blue light. The water outside the window stopped rising. It waited. The neighbor stepped aside. If you walk down, you remain part of it. And if I don't? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, the television displayed Daniel again, standing under the lake. Open. Will. Then another face drifted past. The utility worker. And more. Dozens. Hundreds. All upright. All suspended. If you return above, the neighbor finally said, it chooses someone else. The words felt heavy. Bring someone with you. More. It wasn't about killing. It was about balance. Final escalation. The cracks in the window deepened. Thin streams of water began leaking into the room. But they didn't spread. They formed small circular pools on the floor. Perfect circles. The clock ticked once, though its hands didn't move. The hallway beneath filled higher. Blue light flickering under the surface. The whispering began again. Layered. Stay. Rest. Return. The staircase downward glowed faintly now. Inviting. Peaceful. No drowning. No fear. Just stillness. The neighbor watched me carefully. You're closer to it than the others, he said. Why? His eyes reflected the waterline outside the glass. Because you didn't panic. The glass shattered silently. Water rushed in. But it didn't knock me down. It rose around my legs gently. Cold. Familiar. The staircase downward disappeared beneath the surface. The ceiling dissolved into dark water above. The entire room submerged. Yet I still stood, breathing normally. The neighbor's form began dissolving slowly, breaking into ripples. You're not choosing fast enough, he whispered. And then he was gone. Part 6. The depth where it breathes. The numbers beneath me kept glowing. 0. They didn't shine brightly. They pulsed. Like something alive marking its territory in the dark. The water around me felt heavier now. Not violent. Not aggressive. Just dense. Pressing gently against my chest, my shoulders, my face. though I was still breathing normally. The floating figures drifted in slow circles. Daniel passed in front of me once more. Open. Still aware, but distant, like he was listening to something far below. And then I felt it. Pull. Soft atmospheric opening. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't forceful. It was gradual, like gravity shifting slightly in a room. My feet left the invisible floor beneath the water. The glow of 303 deepened, and the entire submerged cabin faded into darkness. The water thickened around me until it no longer felt like water at all. Felt like air again, cold air. And then, my feet touched something solid. And, wet, but not underwater. I opened my eyes fully. I was standing on the bottom of the lake. And above me, there was no surface. Only endless black. Introduction of the 3.03 depth. The world down there was vast. Not a cave. Not an abyss. A shoreline. Mirroring the one above. Trees stretched into darkness in the distance. Cabins lined the edge of a second lake. Identical to the real one. Except this lake did not reflect anything. Its surface absorbed light completely. I wasn't beneath the lake. I was beneath a version of it. Copy. Preserved layer. And at the center of the black water stood something tall. Not shaped like a person. Not shaped like an animal. Just a vertical distortion. Like heat rising from asphalt. Except cold. Extremely cold. Pulsed faintly. In rhythm. 3 slow pulses. 3 slow pulses. First strange detail. Behind me, footsteps moved across the sand. Measured. Turned. A figure walked along the shoreline. Completely shadowed. Even here. Even in darkness. It was darker than everything else. Its outline blurred at the edges. It didn't face me directly. It walked parallel to the water. Like it was patrolling. Or waiting for someone to enter. And then I noticed something else. Every cabin along the shoreline had lights on. Warm yellow lights glowing through windows. But inside each one, a single figure stood. The back window, facing the lake, watching the distortion in the center. All of them were me. Different versions. Older, younger, thinner. For me. Psychological tension. You stayed too long. The voice came from beside me. Whoa. I didn't need to turn. It was the neighbor. But his form here was clearer. More solid. Less fluid. This is the holding shore, he said quietly. For those who hesitate. The distortion in the lake pulsed again. Stronger this time. The sand beneath my feet vibrated slightly. What is it? I asked. He took a slow breath. It's not a creature. Then what? He looked at me finally. It's the absence. The absence. The black water began to ripple outward from the distortion. Perfect circles. Expanding slowly. Where the ripples touched the sand, the ground darkened. Like something was being erased. The shadow figure walking the shoreline stopped. It turned its head toward me. And though it had no visible eyes, felt seen. You're marked because you looked at it too long, the neighbor said softly. Most people glance at the lake and walk away. I didn't. No. The distortion pulsed again. 3 times. And a low hum spread across the shore. The hum felt like pressure inside my skull. A frequency too deep to hear but impossible to ignore. Above the surface. The air flickered around us suddenly. Like a screen glitching. For a moment I saw the real world. A cabin above. Nightfall. And headlights approaching through the trees. Truck. Different from before. This one moved fast. Stopped near the cabin. A man stepped out holding something in his hand. Gas can. He moved toward the porch. The neighbor sighed. They always try fire. Someone tries to burn the cabin. The vision sharpened. I could see the man clearly now. Not a utility worker. Not random. Someone from the town. He poured gasoline along the wooden steps. Across the base of the walls. Hands shaking. Desperate. The power in the town behind him was out completely. Street lights dead. Houses dark. Only the lake faintly reflecting moonlight. He struck a match. For a second nothing happened. Then flame caught. Slowly. Soft orange light licking at the base of the cabin. The fire spread upward. Quietly. No explosion. Just steady burning. I felt heat brush against my face. Even down here. The distortion in the lake pulsed violently. The shadow figure began walking toward the water. Escalation. Above, the fire climbed higher. Windows cracking. Smoke rising into the night. But something was wrong. The flames bent. Not upward. They leaned toward the lake. As if pulled on. The water at the shoreline above began rising. Flowing toward the cabin. Against gravity. Climbing the wooden walls. The man with the gas can stepped back in horror. The water reached the flames. And instead of extinguishing them, it absorbed them. The fire disappeared into the lake's surface. The cabin stood untouched, dry, unburned. The man backed away slowly, then stopped. His posture relaxed. Completely. Only. He walked past the porch, toward the water, without hesitation, and stepped in. The surface swallowed him silently. The radio spreads. The hum around us deepened. The distortion in the lake grew taller. Later. In the distance, beyond the cabins on the holding shore, faint lights flickered on. Not warm cabin lights. Red blinking lights. Radio towers. Dozens of them. Emerging from darkness. Static filled the air suddenly. Soft at first. Then layered. Multiple voices overlapping. Broadcasting the same message. There will be one final entry before dawn. The voice wasn't just mine now. It was hundreds of voices. All identical. All calm. All inviting. The shadow figure reached the edge of the black lake. And stepped in. Without ripple. Without splash. The realization. The neighbor looked at me carefully. It's expanding. What is? He gestured toward the distant red towers. The frequency. The distortion pulsed again. Stronger. The sand beneath my feet began dissolving slowly into dark water. This lake is only one opening, he continued. The anomaly isn't local. Cold spread through me in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. It's broadcasting, I whispered. He nodded once. Through power grids. Through radio waves. Through signals. The floating versions of me inside the shoreline cabins began stepping out of their doors. One by one. Walking toward the black lake. In unison. Peaceful. Final escalation. The ground beneath me softened further. Water rising to my ankles. The distortion's pulses matched my heartbeat now. 3 beats. 3 beats. The red radio towers in the distance multiplied. Spreading outward. Beyond the forest. Beyond the town. Into unseen places. The static grew louder. But still gentle. Sleep-inducing. Inviting. You can still return, the neighbor said softly. But not alone. I looked at him slowly. What does that mean? His reflection in the black water looked distorted. Longer. Thinner. You understand the balance now. Bring someone with you. More. The shadow figure beneath the surface rose again. But this time it had my shape. Fully formed. Standing waist-deep in the black water. Waiting for me to step forward. End of part 6, cliffhanger. Above us, the real sky flickered. For a split second, I saw the entire town in darkness. Phones lighting up one by one at exactly 3:03 a.m. Text messages sent from unknown numbers. The same message appearing everywhere. Did you see it in the water? The distortion surged violently. The black lake began rising toward the holding shore. Heard me. And from beneath its surface, something enormous shifted. Not a creature. Not a body. Void. Expanding upward. And I finally understood. It wasn't pulling people down. It was replacing them. One at a time. And my replacement was already standing in the water. Waiting for me to step aside. Part 7. The night it reaches the shore. The version of me standing in the black water did not move. It didn't need to. It was patient. The void behind it pulsed slowly, stretching upward like a second horizon forming in the dark. The sand beneath my feet was almost gone now. Thin water covered everything, reflecting nothing. The cabins along the holding shore had gone dark. Every version of me that had stepped outside was gone. Only the lake remained. And the shape waiting inside it. Soft atmospheric opening. The neighbor stood beside me, quieter than before. Less defined. As if the longer I stayed here, the less solid he became. "It's nearly 3:03, he said gently. There was no sky here. No moon. No stars. But I felt time tightening around us like a closing fist. The hum in the air grew softer. Lower. More intimate. Like breath close to my ear. Above us, reality flickered again. The real cabin. The trees bending in wind. The hidden path behind the house visible once more. Flattened grass leading straight to the lake. It hadn't been there earlier. Now it was clear. Waiting. The hidden path reopens. The vision sharpened. I saw my physical body standing on the shoreline, facing the water. Unmoving. Like a sleepwalker. The porch light flickered behind it. The back door open. Wind moving through the empty cabin. The attic hatch slightly ajar. Everything felt aligned. Prepared. The neighbor exhaled slowly. "This is the final alignment." "Alignment for what?" "Yes. For exchange." The word settled heavy in my chest. The neighbor's true fate. I turned toward him fully now. "You never left, did you?" He shook his head slowly. "I thought I did." His outline flickered. For a moment I saw him differently. Younger. Standing on that same shoreline years ago. Alone. Looking into the water too long. "They warned me too," he said softly. "Who?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured toward the void rising behind the shadow version of me. "It doesn't force. It invites." The shadow self in the water lifted one hand slightly. Not threatening. Just mirroring. "You chose to guide others," I said. He gave a faint smile. I delayed long enough that it split me. My throat tightened. "You're not fully here." "No." His voice grew thinner. "I'm the part that resisted." The rest of him was already in the lake. The final 3:03. The hum stopped. Complete silence fell across the holding shore. 3 pulses. Stronger than before. The void rose higher. The shadow version of me stepped forward in the water. Now chest deep. Still watching. The vision above sharpened completely. The real shoreline. My body standing there. And behind it, something new. A shadow figure emerging from the tree line. Featureless. Walking toward my body. Low. Deliberate. The same one that had patrolled this shore. It reached the hidden path. And stopped. As if waiting for my decision. Psychological tension. "You can return," the neighbor whispered. "But if you do, it will remain hungry. And if I don't, it closes the cycle." The red radio towers in the distance began blinking faster. Static returned faintly. Not overwhelming. Just present. Phones above the surface began lighting up across the town again. One by one. Unknown numbers. Text messages appearing simultaneously. "He's next. Bring someone with you." 3:03. The shadow version of me in the lake tilted its head. Exactly the way I had when I first noticed something was wrong. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't angry. It was incomplete. Waiting to be finished. The lake reaches beyond the forest. The vision shifted again. The lake in the real world began expanding. Not flooding violently, but stretching. Its shoreline creeping outward slowly. Touching the base of trees that had never been near water before. Roots darkening. Grass flattening. The town's outskirts felt it first. Basements dampening. Street drains filling. Not panic. Not chaos. Just quiet seepage. Like the world itself adjusting. The shadow figure behind my physical body stepped closer. Raised one hand. And gently placed it on my shoulder. My body did not react, did not turn, did not resist. The neighbor's voice broke slightly. If you don't choose now, it chooses for you. The replacement. The void behind the shadow self surged upward. Not explosively, but completely. It filled the sky of this lower world. Black beyond black. And inside it, faint outlines of faces flickered. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all upright, all still. The shadow version of me stepped fully onto the holding shore. Water falling from its clothes in perfect circles that didn't spread. It walked toward me, each step silent, measured, until it stood inches away. Its eyes were mine, but empty of fear. You were already under, it whispered again. This time I understood. The moment I stared at the lake too long that first night, a version of me had already stepped in. What stood on the shoreline above now might not be entirely me. The exchange may have started days ago. Slowly, quietly, unnoticed. The neighbor fades. The neighbor's form began breaking apart into faint ripples of light. You can anchor it, he said quickly. How? Step forward willingly. And then? He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. His outline dissolved completely, scattering into the air like mist, leaving me alone with the shadow version of myself. The void pulsed once more. 3 times. 3 times. The holding shore beneath my feet began dissolving. Only the black water remained. The shadow self extended its hand. Not forceful. Not demanding. Simply offering. End of Part 7. Cliffhanger. Above the surface, the clock inside the cabin clicked forward. 2:59 a.m. 3 o'clock. 3:01. 3:02. The shadow figure behind my body tightened its grip on my shoulder. The hidden path glistened with moisture. The lake's surface went perfectly still. No wind. No ripple. Total calm. The final second approached. And I finally understood. There was never one version of me. There were always 2. One above. One below. And at 3:03 a.m., only one would remain. The void pulsed. The shadow self's hand hovered inches from mine. And somewhere above the waterline, a single, soft knock echoed through the cabin. 3 times. Part 8. The one who stays above. The knock echoed softly through the cabin. 3 times. Not loud. Not urgent. Just patient. Above the surface, the clock shifted. 3:02 a.m. Wind moved through the trees in a long, whispering breath. The lake stilled completely. No ripple. No reflection. Total calm. Below, in the dark mirror world, the shadow version of me kept its hand extended, waiting. The void behind it pulsed once. 3 times. The final second. 3:03 a.m. Everything aligned. Above, my body on the shoreline inhaled slowly. Below, I stepped forward. Not because I was forced. Not because I was afraid. But because I understood. The lake did not hunt. Did not chase. Balanced. For every gaze that lingered too long. For every mind that tried to understand it. For every attempt to burn it, drain it, expose it. It adjusted. One remained above. One remained below. Exchange complete. Choice. The shadow version of me did not grab my hand. Did not pull. It simply lowered its arm as I walked past it. Into the black water willingly. The cold wasn't painful. It was quiet. Comforting in a distant way. The void did not feel like death. Felt like absence. Like becoming the space between signals. Between breath. Between heartbeats. As I descended, the holding shore dissolved. The cabins faded. The red radio towers blinked once. And went dark. Above the surface. The shadow version of me inhaled sharply on the shoreline. Fully. Like someone waking from deep sleep. The shadow figure behind it dissolved into mist. The hidden path dried instantly. Grass lifting back upright. As if nothing had pressed it down. The cabin lights flickered once. Then stabilized. Warm yellow glow through the windows. Inside, the clock ticked normally. 3:04 a.m. Wind moved across the lake's surface, creating gentle ripples. Natural. Ordinary. The water no longer pressed outward toward the trees. It rested within its banks again. Peaceful. Contained. Town. Miles away, power returned softly. Street lights hummed back to life. Phones stopped buzzing. The unknown numbers vanished from call logs. Text messages erased themselves. The radio towers that had blinked red in the dark forest were gone by morning. No trace. Only quiet. A few residents would later say they dreamed of standing near water. But dreams fade quickly. Especially calm ones. The cabin weeks later. I wake up early now. Before sunrise. I stand at the back window of the cabin and look at the lake. Every morning. The surface is calm. Reflective. I do not stare too long. I do not step onto the hidden path. Because it is no longer there. Sometimes when the wind moves just right, I hear faint static in the air. Barely noticeable. Like a distant radio searching for signal. But it never locks onto anything. The attic no longer drips. The floorboards remain dry. There is no crawl space beneath the cabin. Check. There is only solid foundation now. Normal. Stable. The neighbor. No one lives in the woods nearby. I've walked for miles in every direction. No abandoned houses. No old foundations. No sign that there were ever more cabins here. When I asked a hardware store clerk in town about drowning incidents, he frowned. There's never been anything like that, he said. The lake has an ordinary name. An ordinary history. No anomaly recorded. No 3.03 depth marker. Just water. Just trees. Just quiet. A subtle shift. But sometimes, at exactly 3:03 a.m., I wake without knowing why. Not in fear. Not in panic. Just awake. Listening. The cabin feels still. The forest silent. And for a brief second, I feel as though someone is standing behind me, watching me look toward the lake. Not threatening. Not angry. Just observing. Balancing. Then the feeling passes. And I sleep again. The truth. The lake never wanted destruction. Never wanted chaos. It wanted symmetry. It expands only when observed too deeply. When minds try to measure it, to define it, to broadcast it, it resists understanding. And when someone looks long enough, creates space for that curiosity. Below. Where questions become quiet. Where signals fade. Where static replaces thought. There is no monster in the water. No creature beneath the surface. Only absence. And the space it makes for those who seek it. Final scene. Tonight, the rain taps gently against the cabin windows. Wind slides through the trees in long, slow breaths. The lake moves softly against the shore. Natural. Peaceful. I sit by the fireplace, watching the reflections on the glass. I do not approach the water. I do not follow hidden paths. I simply listen. And somewhere very deep beneath the surface, far below 3.03 meters, something shifts. Not rising. Not reaching. Just turning slowly. Waiting for the next person. Who looks a little too long.